and he's not emotionally aroused, he nonetheless has principles that he stands by. In the modern world today, especially in the world of liberalism, you definitely need to have principles. You follow your emotions. If emotions feel one way, that's what you should be. If your emotions feel another way, that's what you should be. Always follow your emotions. That we have principles of things we do, whether we're intellectually or emotionally motivated or not. We, of course, try to get intellectually and emotionally motivated, but lack thereof is not going to remove us from staying principled. A tikkun we can do for Bechinas Raglayim is to strengthen the Kabbalah Soul, which of course is the whole idea of Nasav and Nishma. And as a representative, we have about visiting. So that is my father-in-law's brother-in-law, my shviger's brother. Okay. With that said, we're going to begin, before we continue our normal Seder in Siman Daled, as we started 2 classes ago. We began it.
Yeah, it's fine.
Good.
Yeah, we're good.
So we're going to discuss just introductory shiloh that I received recently. That's important to know. Shkoyach for doing it. Meaning Moshe didn't ask God, didn't advise with him, and God gave the thumbs up. So it says one of them is that he added an additional day towards the 2 days God asked for the Jewish people to separate from their wives. He asked for a 3rd day, according to Bais. And the 3rd thing mentioned there is that he broke the luchos. Hashem said, Yasher koyach sheshibartu. Now why did luchos? So it's explained there that the reason he broke the luchos is because he made a kal v'chayim. If regarding the Korban Pesach, the halacha is that you're not allowed to feed the Passover meat to a mummer, to someone who's a heretic. Certainly the entire Torah you can't feed to someone who's a heretic. Now, Matan Torah we know is considered the Nesuin, the marriage of Klal Yisrael. So we're going to discuss a marriage question, which goes as follows. You heard about, you were told about, you were offered about, whatever it is, a couple, they decided they want to get married. Very happy, because this couple is not a religious couple. So you didn't expect them to get married the Jewish way. And now they're telling you, we want to get married through a rabbi, through a chuppah. And you're overjoyed. Wow, they're beginning to be choser b'tshuvah. They're beginning their path to repentance. They want a rabbinical wedding. And maybe they even offer you. They don't understand that you need to be qualified, that you need to have certain background of studies to be able to be a Masad Kedushin. They said, oh, you're religious. I want you to officiate the wedding. So is this a matter to be excited for and say yes to, or arrange a different rabbi to do, or is this a matter to take very cautiously? There are 4 halachic questions involved in marrying off a couple who's not from. The first question is, will they be keeping Taras HaMishpach? Will they be keeping family purity laws? If they will not, then officiating in such a wedding, engaging in such a union, promoting such a union, blessing such a union, can fall under the question of whether it transgresses the prohibition of thou shalt not place a stumbling block in front of someone else. If naive, or at the very least, the isser of the you shall not be an accomplice, you shall not be a supporter of a sinful activity. That's one question. Another question based on that. Another question that comes up is, how are you Masada Kedushin? How can you say a bracha of Birchas Erusin and Sheva brachas when most likely this couple has been intimate already before the marriage? Would be these are brachas levatolos regarding the Sheva brachas. Number 3 is regarding the serious issue of Eishes Ish. That if a person marries them in a kosher way, he now has to take the responsibility and have foresight. What's going to be if they one day decide to separate? this discussion that we're having right now comes at the very same day that the National Bureau of Statistics in Israel released the divorce rates of the previous year of 2018. And it's unfortunately astounding. Tel Aviv went up about 20% from the previous year. In divorces, they had more divorces than the entire Jerusalem, despite being much smaller of a size in population. In general, the divorce rate went up in almost all the cities, but in some cities it went down. In any event, though, one of the things that we learn from these statistics is that, unfortunately, especially among the non-religious areas, the divorce rate is going higher and higher. And let me emphasize, that's divorces that went through the Rabbanut with a kosher get. Now, that's a sample of the population. And you can just imagine, if there's 800 listed, I think there was 752 listed divorces in that population, so you can imagine how many separations there are that didn't go through an official get, an official divorce. And as we know, that if they go ahead and live with somebody else before getting a get, children are mamzerim, severe isser v'eshes ish. So it's a very, very heavy question for someone to enter into being a Masader Kedushin or pushing for a non-religious couple to get married in a kosher way. And the Gedolei HaPoskim have dealt with this question, and we have different consensus, we have different psukim that are given, different arrangements that are done. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is because people aren't aware of this, so they automatically become excited. Oh my gosh, this relative of mine wants to get married in a kosher way. We have to verify these aspects first, because we may be entering them into a trap. Because if it's a kosher kedushin and they don't want to get a divorce through a get, then what have we done? But the first issue is, in general, an issue of taras mishpacha. So the first issue settled, of family purity, it's the psak of the Minchas Yitzchak, that's what's accepted here in Eretz Yisrael, is that we make the chassan and the kala at the very least agree to keep taras mishpacha for the wedding. That she will keep all the purity laws beforehand, she will purify herself, go through the 7 clean days, immerse in a kosher mikvah. And what happens afterwards, we hope this will be a motivational step for them to continue the laws of family purity. But we no longer have that responsibility on our shoulders as a Masader Kedushin or someone facilitating such a shidduch, so long as we got them to guarantee at least to that first, to the first night of the wedding. It's going to be done in a kosher way. And that's practically the directive of the Rabbanut that they do. They require, it's an absolute requirement in the Rabbanut for everyone, religious and non-religious, to get a slip. You just went through this, to get a slip from a licensed kala teacher for the kala, that she went through the studies and that she performed what she needed to perform, and only then can the rabbi be Masader Kedushin. But if they say, Rabbi, don't, one step at a time, don't give us these old extinct practices, which are, they're only followed back in the day when the divorce rate was very low, but today the divorce rate is very high, and we want to go with society, So we don't want to do something that stops this. I'm joking, I'm being ironic, sarcastic. But the point is that if they are, if they say straight up, no, we're not going to do this, then in most cases, most likely, there is no room for up to be Masader Kedushin for such a union.
What should we advise them?
You should advise them to keep taras mishpacha.
No, I mean, a couple.
You should explain to them how this is one of the few mitzvahs that you see the peiros b'olam hazeh. You see the fruits in this world. If you don't plan on this marriage being a temporary marriage, like a lease, for 5-year lease for your car, then this is one of the ways of guaranteeing it. So it's an easy sell. Taras mishpacha is an easy sell. So that's what you have. The focus has to be not on trying to argue to make a siddur kedushin for a couple who's stubborn to not keep taras mishpacha, but the opposite, to get them to keep taras mishpacha. The Rebbe Rayatz once wrote to a mother who told the Rebbe Rayatz that her daughter does not want to keep Taras HaMishpacha. The Rebbe Rayatz told her not to show up to the wedding. Tell the daughter that you're not going to show up to the wedding if she does this. This was in the 40s, I'm sorry. A little different of a time, but I'm not saying that's the approach today necessarily, but nonetheless we see that the idea is that, we shouldn't, just because the idea of chuppah and kedushin is a mitzvah, not in all cases is it given a blessing. Not in all cases should we do it.
What happens when a woman stops having a period?
If there's no issue taras hamishpacha, then she goes one time to the mikveh and she's done. So if she's a 45, 50-year-old, kala, then of course it's an easy sell. In fact, even if she says, no, I refuse, I think it's barbaric, the mikveh, I heard all these stories, no problem, don't go to mikveh, go for a swim in the ocean. Tell her, go for a swim in the ocean with a loose bathing suit, and she just went to mikveh for the last time that she needs for her life. So there's ways out of it. But bottom line is that there has to be a purity in this situation. Now, the second issue, even if, let's say, they say, okay, we agree for the first time to, follow through. This, especially in Eretz Yisrael, this is an issue because they can't get married in certain halls. They have a lot of restrictions if they're not going to go through the Rabbanut's system, criteria. So a lot of them are doing it just, not really. They're doing because they have to. And we don't even know if they're following through. We don't even know if they're following through for the wedding. They're claiming they do. She went to a college teacher, but we don't really know for a fact. If they're doing Shiva Nakim, etc. So bottom line is that we have here the second calculation, which is the serious worry of mamzer. If this is a couple, this is what I tell people. When people ask me, I was told to be Masada Kedushin for, a non-religious couple, and I'm very excited. I'm like, hold your horses. Before you get so excited about being Masada Kedushin for this couple, you need to speak to them about Taras HaMishpacha. You need to get them to accept to keep Taras HaMishpacha, or at the very least for the wedding, to keep Taras HaMishpacha. And number two, you have to explain to them the necessity of giving a get, and that they have to understand this very well, and that they will agree that if they get divorced, they can't do it only civilly. It has to be done according to the guidelines of halacha, which is through a get and a bezdin. And if they don't want to, if they can't assign for such a thing, they don't want to assign for such a thing, so you have no responsibility to be Masada Kedushin for them. Or, as they would do in many places, the Rav, who was Masada Kedushin, would put Pasal Eidim for the Kedushin. Invalid witnesses. They would have invalid witnesses for the Kedushin, for the Chuppah. Why? Because to say no, to tell them no, I'm not going to do it, when here in Israel, the Rabbanut has to. They have to perform it. So, in other words, there is no, it doesn't matter if you're religious or not religious. If you went through the process, you went through the paperwork, you checked off the list, that's it. The Rav of the city or the Yeshuv has to, mandatory, perform the Kedushin. There's no way out. That's what he's there. That's what he's getting a salary for. The one thing he's there to do, he's not going to do. What's he going to get paid for? So they have to. But what would a lot of Rabbanim do in these type of areas where the rate of infidelity was extremely high, where they would just break the marriage and not go to the Rabbanut for a get and have mamzerim? So they would do this. They would make a kedushin, but they would get pasal witnesses. The people by the chuppah don't know anything. They're not from. One second. So what would they do? We're going to honor the father of the kala as an aide. And we're also going to honor the brother of the kala as an aide. And everyone's so impressed. Wow, this rabbi, we like this rabbi. All the other rabbis wouldn't give it this honorary position to our relatives. We love this rabbi.
But you said once that a couple, like at the time of before the Gemara, before when a couple would live together, they're considered as married. Before the Rabbanim, before all the institution of the...
Yeah, that was before the Torah was given.
So
before the Torah was given.
For these people?
The Torah was given, the laws changed. Before the Torah was given, there wasn't such thing as marriage.
People, they live together. Their marriage was not kosher. They didn't know about it. So that they don't have when they divorce, they don't have any, I understand that. But in a way,
unfortunately, they don't divorce usually. That's why they don't marry. Understand?
yeah. So that is just to avoid the union of
Mamzeros.
Yeah. Okay. But still, these people, they have, I mean, in terms of somewhere, they have the status of being married somewhere. They are together, live together, they have children together.
Yeah.
What are they considered according to Torah?
They're considered
Biblically,
a male and a female living together and having children. You said it very
they are
well.
not, there is nothing which has to do
They
with
are
marriage.
Suffolk married. No, they are Suffolk married. There are other calculations here, but the point is, the reason why this is done is not to chas v'shalom, have some kind of animosity towards the couple. This is done for their own sake, to save any of their future children.
Okay.
I'll give you a story that
But it's creating another problem before you go into the story. That point is understood, the fear, but it's like the lesser of two evils. He's now marrying people, quote unquote, marrying people who aren't really married. Isn't that pretty bad?
Right.
It's a very serious situation also.
And Mamzeris is also a very serious situation.
So it's like
With
lesser of two
listen, they
evils.
were anyways, they're not religious, they anyways lived together beforehand. They're not like, so this is the calculation that is taken. I'll give you a story that happened. There was a case came to the Bais in Yerushalayim in the 1970s or 80s. And basically this was it was in the 80s. A 20-something-year-old son came to the Rabbanut to get married. And they looked up, they have the files there in the Rabbanut. They have all the files of his family. And they looked up and they saw his mother was married to person A in 1950. And she did not get a divorce from person A, while he wrote on his marriage application, that his father's person B. So he wrote in his application, his father's person B. Well, on record, they have her married to person A, which means he's a mamzer, which means he can't get married. Now, they take these cases very seriously because we don't want to have mamzer. So we want to find whatever loophole we can in halacha to what's called duhataras mamzer, to release this person from his mamzer status so he can marry. But it was stuck. They interviewed, they called the mother for an interview. And the mother said straight up, she had marriage problems with her first husband, and she left him, and she married, and she went to marry somebody else. She never got a get, never thought about getting a get. She straight up said the story as it was. So they thought it was stuck. They sent it to someone who became later on the chief rabbi of Israel, Mordechai, who was at that time in charge of the Av Bezdin in Yerushalayim. They sent it to Mordechai, and the Mordechai said, listen, there's nothing really to do right now based on the facts I see in the case. But, we happen to have in our record a picture of the ksuba. Let's take a look at the ksuba. Let's see if the first kedushin was done okay. He looked through the ksuba, and he found something very strange. He saw that the Eidim had the same last name as the husband. Now, if those Eidim were relatives of the husband, then the ksuba is invalid. It still doesn't make the kedushin invalid, because it's different Eidim, could be. But they went and they tracked down the rabbi who did this marriage in the 1950s in one of the kibbutzim, and they called him in. He came in, and the Mordechai asked him, we have this ksuba, and it's, we have this discrepancy because the name sounds like they're relatives. What's going on? So he said, I'll tell you. My policy was in all the kibbutzim that because we know what happens there, the infidelity rate is very high. They don't go and get gets. Therefore, I would always make sure to use pasul eidin for the kedushin. So basically, this ksuba was not a ksuba, the marriage was not a marriage, and this boy is not a mamzer. And they released him then and there from his mamzeros. He was able to get married. So this is why they do it, some do it, in order to avoid this problem. Again, the point of this all is not to automatically discourage, God forbid, someone who says, I want to get married through a Rav. Let it be a sign in the right direction, but it has to go all the way to the right direction and not be something that chas v'shalom can mess him or us up later on. Okay, we're going to go now to our main subject. Siman Daled in the Shulchan Aruch. We are beginning the laws of morning washing. Tilas Yadayim of the morning Negel Maser. So in this book, it splits to 3 chapters, chapter 3, 4, and 5. It's about it's only about 70 pages of material. The 3 chapters split as follows. Chapter number 1 deals with the restrictions prior to washing hands. Chapter 2 deals with the laws of the actual washing itself. That's chapter 4 in this book. And chapter 5 deals with other washings that we do. All these 3 topics are discussed in this siman. This siman Dalet is a very long siman. It has 23 halachas. And the beginning talks about, the beginning is mainly the restrictions, then it moves on to the laws of the washing, and then it moves on to the other times that we wash our hands. Okay? So we're gonna read and stop periodically for the different points as we go through it. Siman Daled halacha aleph. Yirchatz yado v'yivarech al netilas yadayim. When the person wakes up in the morning, he is to wash his hands and say the blessing while netilas yadayim. Why do we wash hands in the morning and say a bracha? This is something that every little Jewish child grows up doing, starting from age 2 or 3 years old. We do it our whole lives. What's the reason? What's the background behind this washing? So most people will say, because the hands are tamei. They are not incorrect, but they're also not correct. There are 3 reasons recorded for why we wash hands in the morning. And the fact that our hands are impure is not what makes it or breaks it. And I'll explain. We're going to learn in the next seif, and that's what we're going to spend most of today. That's what we're going to spend the rest of today on, of the various restrictions that apply prior to washing hands and getting rid of this impurity. However, we never find in halacha that we say a blessing upon washing to get rid of a danger. There's another time we wash. Give me an example of another time that we wash to get rid of a danger, and we don't say a blessing. Okay, yeah. Another example.
In the morning, by waking up.
Okay, no, that's true. We'll discuss that. It's really
washing before sleeping.
Okay. Well, they're not washing for sakana. They're not washing because of danger. They're washing because they have an obligation to wash before Mesias Kapayim. Mayim achrayim is done, right? Washing hands at the end of a meal. We do it because of the dangerous salt, sodomite salt, that may be in the food and it can blind someone. We don't say a bracha because we never say a blessing when it's simply to remove a danger. If you see a scorpion on the floor and you killed it, you say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech be'olam al harigas a scorpion? Asher kedeshanu? No. Why? You did a mitzvah. You just lisavad al dam reyecha.
Maybe chefing on
it. You say agamel sometimes after danger.
Do you say again? Right, that's a different point. But my point is that when we get rid of a sakana, there's no bracha. Because getting rid of a sakana, all that's doing is fulfilling an shmartem eid min nafshei seichem. We never say a blessing on the leisa. If we said a blessing on the leisa, then we'd be saying blessings all day. Every time we walk in the street and we close our eyes and put our eyes down, we just fulfill the leisa say. So we'll all be saying brachas, but we can't say brachas because there's things that we're not let us look at when we're saying brachas. So, it's a catch-22. Bottom line is that we never say a blessing in a negative command. So if the whole purpose of washing in the morning is to get rid of this bad spirit which causes danger, then we shouldn't be saying a blessing. So that indeed is not the reason why we say a blessing on Netilas Yadayim. And that's what the Mechaber had to emphasize, that when we wash hands in the morning, we say a blessing on Netilas Yadayim. As you shouldn't think that this is similar to other types of washings or activities that is simply done to get rid of a danger. But rather, there's more depth in this washing. And what is that depth? So we have 3 opinions. 2 opinions in the Rishonim, the Alter Rebbe turned into 3 opinions. We have the opinion of the Rosh and the Rambam. Okay, the Rosh and the Rambam held a very interesting position which we do not rule like today. So I'm already prefacing that. We do not rule like their position. But they held the following. The sages instituted that prior to every prayer, Shachris and Mincha, and possibly also Ma'ariv, one is required to have pure hands. Yes, not possibly Ma'ariv, also Ma'ariv. One is required to have pure hands, which means you are obligated to wash. Now, if you're obligated to wash, you're obligated to say a blessing. Anytime the sage is obligated to washing, for the sake of, again, if it's not to remove danger, but if it's for some other purpose, then you have to say a blessing, right? Why do we wash for bread? Why do we wash for bread? It's not written in the Torah. The sages instituted it. Now, if I'm eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner with bread, I only say one bracha of ameitzi in the morning? No. Every time, right?
You have ana. You have an ana.
Ana.
When you eat bread,
and when I daven, I also have ana. Whether if I'm paying attention, I have all this Abbas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, and if not, I get a lot done during a lot of machshavas. You get a lot done during davening. So either way, you get pleasure from davening, right?
Not everybody.
Everyone's doing something during davening. There's no such thing as someone just being blank, right? Something's being accomplished. I hope. The mind is always racing. So bottom line is that according to them, the Rosh and the Rambam, remember this is a big alliance, Rosh and Rambam, same team. The Bais Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch said whenever two of the three Rishonim agree, that's the halacha. And who was on that Supreme Court? The Rosh, Rambam, and the Rif. So we got two of the three to agree, and they hold that prior to every prayer, it's an obligation to wash hands, to prepare yourself, purify yourself for the prayer. And therefore, if the Rambam would have walked into this shul for Ma'ariv, you would see him wash hands with a bracha. You would think he's having a meal, maybe wants to fabring a little bit before Ma'ariv. No. He's washing because he holds you have to wash the bracha before davening, each one of the three prayers. So that's one reason. One reason is due to purity of the hands. And so therefore, washing with a blessing in the morning is not unique to the morning. It's unique to Shachris. And the same would apply to Mincha, and the same would apply to Ma'ariv. Now, what's the reason why you do need to rewash with a bracha before each prayer? The same reason why you need to rewash before eating bread each meal, because you didn't pay attention to keep your hands clean, right? At night when we sleep, our hands move around. It can touch areas that are normally covered, and it became impure, it became dirty. So too, between breakfast and lunch, we aren't guarding our hands. So therefore, since there's a chance that they became dirty, the sages required them to be washed, and they are washed with the blessing, and the same thing would be here regarding that.
That's one opinion, that they're washed with the blessing from Mincha and
correct. That is the opinion of the Rosh and the Rambam. That's the first opinion that the Alter Rebbe brings in the Shulchan Aruch in chapter 4. However, as I already said, we do not rule like this opinion in the sense that we say a blessing, but we do suspect for their opinion in the sense that we require washing before each davening. The Rashba and others argue, they say, no, the sages never instituted a washing prior to prayer, just in the morning. So we'll discuss that soon. Okay, so he argues on the premises of a requirement of washing before prayer. You only have to wash in the morning and you're good, you're done.
That's for Shachris, that opinion?
Just before Shachris, before, when you wake up. But according to the Rambam and the Rosh, you have to wash before every prayer. And practically, we suspect for their opinion. And that's why, yes, we take that into account. We try to fulfill their opinion. Meaning that we are careful before Shabbos Mincha Ma'ariv to wash hands before we go to daven. We don't say a bracha because we suspect for the counter opinion. We suspect for the dissenting opinion. We say there's no obligation to wash. So Safek Brachas Lahaka, we apply the rule of that in a case of doubt, we don't say a blessing.
This morning we do say the blessing.
Because in the morning everyone's in agreement.
Okay.
The dispute is only regarding if it's also by Mincha and Ma'ariv, that it's required or not. So therefore, we do not say a blessing on it, but we do require washing, and the halach is that a person is obligated to search for water up to a mill's distance, which is an 18-minute walk. you have to search for water to wash.
You kidding me?
No, you don't need a keli min adin, but you need to search a mill's distance for washing.
Question. If we're talking about washing on the Gofel for Shavuos, and the Kohanim, they said they can't get to the station to wash because it's so massive with all the people there. So is that okay according to Halakha that they don't wash?
And very good question, whoever is going to do Birchas Kayanim should wash early and make sure they guard their hands until the time of, Nesias Kapayim comes. That's what they have to do.
I'll bring a bucket of water next time. Saturday.
Here in Israel and Shavuos, people throw water everywhere, so I don't know if it's such a problem. Yeah, it's a minute. They throw weird custom of throwing water.
He said you wash, but you don't need the cups. You just put your hand under the water.
The minhag is to wash 3 times alternatively. That's the custom, to wash for davening. But that from the letter of the law, we don't require that. From the letter of the law, even just turning on the sink and just washing from the faucet is okay, as long as you have some water.
I've seen different customs. I have one rabbi who does 1 and 1, and that's it.
Yeah.
Now there's 2.
Well, the 1 and 1 is some people do even for washing for bread.
Right.
Yeah. So those who do it for washing for bread, certainly in washing for davening, they wouldn't be more strict. But nonetheless, as I said, when the Rebbe would wash, he would do 3. Alternatively, 1, 2. Before davening, yeah, alternate, just like in the morning. But as we said, minadin, all this is not required. The suspicion, the fact that we suspect for their opinion, meaning that we take their opinion to account and try to fulfill it, just means that we search for water and put water in our hands and clean it. Because to get rid of the tumah, that's all we need. It's not like an official washing of the morning.
Are we completely, with all these opinions so far, everything you've said so far, this is all in preparation for davening. Shachris, we say, we wash, we say,
Right.
We don't say the blessing for the other. So what happened to that idea of waking up and washing to remove?
Okay, I'm getting this opinion of the Rashba. We're up to that right now. The Rashba, who was, all these players, by the way, are Spaniards, right? The Rashba's from Spain. The Rush moved to Spain, and the Rambam was originally from Spain. So these are all Spaniards, Rishonim, that have this discussion. The Rashba held the following. He said that no, it has nothing to do, the sages never instituted for one to wash prior to each prayer. They didn't. And because of his opinion, we actually do not say a bracha. We do not require washing with a kli and all those details. Because we do not rule, bottom line, like the opinion of the Rambam and the Rush. However, so then why do we wash in the morning? So he says the following. When a person, so he says it's because of the impure spirit that's on our hands. We have this tumah on our hands. And and the sages required us to sanctify our hands in the morning and purify them, just like a kohen sanctifies his hands from the kir when he begins his daily service. So he says like this, it's true that we have impure spirit on our hands, and it's true we need to get rid of it because we have all these restrictions that apply, as we're going to learn now, prior to doing so. But that's not the reason why the sages instituted the washing and requiring of the blessing. The reason they instituted is because just like in the actual Bais HaMikdash, when a kohen would come to start his day, the first thing he would have to do is before his avodah, he would have to wash his hands and his feet to purify himself every single day. So too we, every single day, need to prepare ourselves for our purpose in this world, for serving God. So every day the sages required us, similar to a kohen, to wash our hands in the morning. And that's once a day.
And that's nothing to do with, according to that perspective, this has nothing to do with preparing for Shachris or getting ready to daven. It has nothing to do with that at all.
Okay, so it does, because what is the first service we're doing? Shachris. The first service we're doing that day is Shachris. So the purpose is to prepare for service. So but it's preparing for the whole day service and not just for one particular service. That's the difference.
Day service of davening or day service of everything we do?
Of everything, including
mitzvahs,
everything. Exactly, everything, just like a kohen. Now, the Alter Rebbe explains this a little different. So those so far is 2 reasons we said. Third reason, the Alter Rebbe explains a little differently than the Rashba. It says the following, that every single day we awaken with a new soul, meaning he says there's nothing to do with the impure spirit at all. It's just that every day we awaken with a new soul. So So it's like we're a new person. And therefore, every single day we need to re-sanctify ourselves for the daily service of God. So those two reasons are similar. They both have to do with preparing like a kain for the daily service. The question is it connected with the removal of the evil spirit from the hands or not? What are the practical ramifications between all these reasons? Let's give you a few questions. A person already davened Shachris, and then he remembered, oh my gosh, I never washed hands with a blessing before Shachris. Can he do so now? Let's say he washed hands, but he didn't say a bracha. Can he now wash hands with a bracha after Shachris? So if you hold like the Rambam and the Rosh, yeah, do it by Mincha, right? But if you hold like the Rashba, the main service of the day is already over. Shachris is the main service of the day. So practically this is a big machlekes. Some say you can't, it's lost, some say you still could. Bottom line, the way the rules, like the Mishnah Berurah is ruling, before Mincha you should go to the bathroom, so your hands are impure, and then you can wash with a blessing.
Asher Yatzar at that point?
Well, obviously you have to say Asher Yatzar.
But not
For
for
that.
Altis Yadayim and Asher.
Yeah. First Al Tisdayim, yeah.
See both.
Yeah. And another question would be, what about women? Not all women daven Shachris. Even though I believe we've discussed in the past, definitely by the women's share, I believe also in this year as well, we mentioned that there's many women are accustomed, especially those who are busy with children, to not be particular to daven Shachris every single day. Sometimes they only daven on Shabbos if they're able to. During the week, they don't daven Shachris. So they say brachas, they say the morning blessings, and they say Yehiratzeh, Namav Rishain, etc. But that's it. It ends there. The prayer of the day ends there. They don't do anything else. Now we've mentioned that according to halacha, we don't rule this way. There's a minimum prayer that women must follow, even if she's super busy. And we actually made the list of what those minimum prayers are. It doesn't take that long at all. It's a few minutes for her to fulfill our obligatory prayers. But nonetheless, those women who follow the custom, as was the custom back in the day, not to daven Shachris, the question is, are they allowed to wash hands with a bracha in the morning? They're not doing any service. They're not doing the service of Shachris.
Maybe they have their own avodah. They have their own avodah.
Their own avodah. But it's not the avodah of the serving the Bais HaMikdash. The question is, the Chachamim require women to wash hands for the sake of cooking and putting the house neat and changing diapers, taking care of the kids. We're not belittling that work. We're just saying, did they obligate washing hands for that? Like after the diapers are changed, obviously have to wash hands, but beforehand, that's the question.
You could wash without the bracha.
They say, there's a Maisa, they say of Rabbi, I think it was over J.J. Hecht, that he was given directives of the Rebbe to deal with Yaldei Iran. During the Iranian Revolution in the 1970s, I think it was 77, a whole bunch of Iranian, 79, a whole bunch of Iranian kids came they were allowed to immigrate to the United States. And Lubavitch took haven of many of them, and I think J.J. Hecht was in charge of housing or whatever. He was in charge of a lot of these boys. And there was some kind of issue that happened, and basically they decided to wreck the place, in the most, you heard this story? They decided to wreck the place in a very dirty way, and basically they gave him a ton of work to do to clean it up. Now he could have hired people to clean up. He said, the Rebbe gave me this job to do. He said he put on his sirtuk and his gartel, and he cleaned it up with his own hands. So that's, you're saying that, it's a holy job. It's true. The question is, does that necessitate a blessing? Does it mandate a blessing? And bottom line is like this: women say a blessing on washing hands in the morning, even if they are accustomed to not to daven Shachris. Nonetheless, it is still said.
But don't the women have an obligation to daven at least once
As
a day?
I said before, the way we rule is that they are obligated. I said there's a minimum prayer list that they have to follow. But those women who are accustomed, unlike this list, which is the opinion of the Rambam, that they don't have to daven it. So nonetheless, they still do wash with a bracha.
I'm talking about the davening al pitorah, not the
davening al pitorah. Yeah, they fulfill that when they say brachas.
Okay. So
Yeah,
they
when a
make-
woman
they-
says
they
brachas,
have them.
they fulfill the biblical prayer. Yeah.
Okay.
If they pay attention to what they're saying. The women don't have to say Shema. It's a good thing for them to say Shema, and they don't have to say it on time. It's not a must. Another ramification is regarding if someone slept with gloves. Anybody ever sleep with gloves? Gloves. No, really. Well, some people sleep with gloves. And the question is like this: if you slept with gloves, now the evil spirit, your gloves don't block him from coming, so that's not going to protect an evil spirit from coming onto the hands. But if you sleep with gloves, it definitely prevents your hands from touching different areas. What did we say before? That the whole reason, according to the Russian Rambam, you have to wash hands in the morning because it touched uncovered areas. Well, I had gloves on, so I didn't touch anything. So this enters us into this issue. And bottom line, the best thing is that one should try not to sleep with gloves. But if they have to, then they should go to the bathroom. They then make their hands tameh, and then they wash with a bracha.
I didn't hear you say anything about that opinion having to do with touching the unclean areas.
Yeah, I
just
said
heard about
I
preparation
explained
for
that
davening.
according to the Rambam and the Rush, we say that we wash in the morning. We wash in the morning because we need to wash before every prayer because our hands were dirty. Well, if your hands weren't dirty because you had gloves on them the whole night, so then
So too, for according to that opinion, men from Ari, if you didn't get your hands dirty,
Yeah.
somehow you wouldn't have to.
exactly.
How does that differ from wearing gloves and not having to wash before Matzah?
First of all, we rule that you do have to wash even if you're not going to be touching the bread. That's the way we rule. Even those poskim who argue, they only hold it's in a time of need. They don't say you can put on gloves and eat bread without washing. Number three is because it's different reason for the takana. The reason by bread is because we don't want your tummy hands touching the bread. So if you're eating with if you're not touching the bread, then some say that the sages never instituted the requirement for washing. However, in the morning, if we follow the Rashba, this has to do with a daily preparation. What do gloves have to do with it? It's only if you follow the Rambam's position that you say gloves has to do with it.
Your hands will touch parts of your body which are dirty, independent of eating.
Right. Not if you're wearing gloves. The gloves have touched it, not the hands. Right?
The Rashba doesn't care at all about the hands getting unclean in any way. The Rashba
He
doesn't
says
care
the
at all.
hands have impurity. So let's talk about now this impurity, and we're going to go into the impurity and the different restrictions.
We're not from touching things.
But before, let's continue reading inside. We'll read about the impurities on the hands. We're in Sif Bais. One is to be careful to pour on his hand 3 times in order to remove the evil spirit that resides on them. Okay, so normally, let's say we were requiring to wash before Shacharis, like the Rambam, because you have to wash before every prayer. There's no need to wash 3 times. We never find a need to wash 3 times. You only need to wash once with a revius, or maximum twice. The fact that today the Chabad washes 3 times for washing for bread is a chumrah. It's not a requirement from the letter of the law. It's a chumrah. No one says that when you wash for bread, you have to wash 3 times. Yeah, no one says you have to wash 3 times. It's a stringency. So why here does it say you have to wash 3 times? It says yadaktik, that you should pour hands in your, water on your hands 3 times. So this is because of this impurity. Now, usually we think that when we're discussing some, spiritual impurity residing on the hands, this is Kabbalistic information that belongs to the Zohar, and that's not incorrect. But the Talmud also contains a lot of this type of information. And the source of this impurity on the hands is brought in the Gemara in Shabbos 108b. That's where it's discussed. And it says the following. When a person sleeps for 60 breaths, it's a big machlekes how much is 60 breaths. You can never time yourself sleeping 60 breaths. Someone else can.
You're sleeping.
But it's a machlekes. So the consensus is a half hour. But some say 2 minutes. It says David HaMelech never slept for 60 breaths. which is very interesting, right? David Melech connected with Shavuos, passed away Shavuos, and he's also and there's a few interesting connections in David Melech and Shavuos, right? The one day that we don't go to sleep is the day David Melech passed away, and he never slept. David Melech never slept. And there's also a connection with Hoshana Rabbah. Forgot right now, but Hoshana Rabbah is another connection with David. Again, we say Tehillim, and we don't sleep. Anyways, so but that's where it's taken from. It's taken from David Melech. And why did David Melech? He slept. He just didn't sleep 60 breaths. Not to be mistaken. No human being in this world can live without sleeping at all. It's not possible. Only angels. Human beings can't do that. Right? The Gemara says, if somebody says, I swear I will not sleep for 3 days, we don't even wait for him to break his promise, his shvuah, his swear. We already give him malchus for breaking his swear, because it's impossible to fulfill. To not sleep at all for 72 hours, even for a wink. So David Melech slept, but he would wake up within 60 breaths. He never slept for 60 breaths. What's the Gemara? Yeah.
I slept 4.5 hours over 72 hours when I got here. Literally.
Right. Okay. Well, you're running to break the record, but nonetheless, you did sleep over 60 breaths. David HaMelech specifically wouldn't allow himself to sleep 60 breaths because he did not want to have this impure spirit on his body. Ever. Which is a question if you have to wash hands in the morning. But the truth is, it could be washing hands in the morning for davening was only an institution later on of his son, Shlomo HaMelech. It's possible it was only from Shlomo HaMelech. But notwithstanding, he did not sleep this amount of time, so he would not get the impure spirit on his body. Now, it's explained in the Poskim what happens. The Alter Rebbe in the Shulchan Aruch describes it like this in chapter 4. When a person goes to sleep, the godly soul ascends from the body to hopefully to a good place in heaven, to get rejuvenated, to learn some Torah, right? The Rabbeim bring down that if a person is sensitive, he's able to be aware of what his godly soul is learning in heaven, and they learn Chedusha Torah in heaven. However, not always does the soul go into the right chamber. Sometimes it does a little detour and goes to the wrong chamber. That's where we have crazy, wacky dreams. It's explained because the soul knocked on the wrong door. Right? It's explained in Kabbalah that that's the Joker shadim, the shadim of jokes that they do trickeries, they show you false things, they show you all of these magnificent and impossibilities. That's all coming from because you entered into the world of frivolity instead of the world of truth. It doesn't show.
All this information right now about an impurity when you sleep is according only to the Rashba.
No, everyone agrees it's impurity. Everyone agrees it's impurity. The question is the impurity the reason why the sages obligated us to wash with a blessing? That's under debate. But the impurity concept is unanimous.
That helps.
Everyone agrees it's impurity. Okay, the concept of impurity, as I said before, is brought in the Talmud in Shabbos 108b. No one can argue on the Talmud. That obligates every Rishon.
So this impurity is called ruach.
Oh, no. We're going to get to the name in a minute. I was just explaining how the system works. So the person goes to sleep, the godly soul leaves the body, and it takes 60 breaths for the tumah to catch on. Think of the cat. It's like looking to see no one's around. He waits 60 breaths, a half hour. The owner hasn't opened up his door for a half hour, and he comes straight in to attack the garbage or attack whatever he does. Yeah? Take a look. They wait. They work just like the klippas. They stand there, they wait. I once timed it with a cat. There was a cat, I shoot him away, I went to a little hiding place and I watched. He waited, I saw him, he was waiting, he waited about 15 minutes and only then he came back. He was makel with the 60 breaths. It was a little makel, but they wait, and the tumah is doing the same thing. The tumah waits for the godly soul to have a nice leave, a 60 breath leave, and then it makes its way in the body. Says the Gemara, the name of this tumah is called shipsa and bas melech. Now, it's explained in Kabbalah that there's 60,000 different types of impurities. Some higher, some lower, some more potent, some weaker. However, this tumah called Shipson Bas Melech, it's called Bas Melech for a reason. It's like the princess of all tumahs. It's one of the strongest impurities that exist. And that's what enters into the body for the simple reason that we know that sleep is like a 60th of death, right? Like a 60th of death, and just like when a person dies, God forbid, when a person passes away, then the tumah enters into the body. So too it is when a person sleeps, which is similar to death. This impurity, heavy impurity, enters the body. Now the person wakes up. What happens when the person wakes up? The nefesh elikis returns to the body, makes its way back in, and they cannot reside together. It's like the guy entering his house with the cat inside. The cat right away runs away. So the tumah right away exits the body, but remnants of it remain in the tips of the fingers. Fingers. Now you know why we do navel visor, to the hand specifically, because that's where the tumah resides. After a person has awakened, his godly soul is returned. It's banished the tumah for everywhere else, but the tumah still resides in the hands, for which reason we need to then wash the hands to get rid of it.
The Negel Wasser is the washing we've been referring to this whole year, or that's the later washing we do have to go to the bathroom that covers both?
Ideally, you could do both at the same time. We're going to learn this later on next week. Ideally, you could wash hands one time in the morning. It gets rid both of the impurity and prepares you for davening. So you got rid of the impurity and you say a blessing over the washing at the same time. Today, practically, since we have to go to the bathroom, we do it in two separate times. We do the first one to get rid of impurity and the second one for davening preparation.
So that covers all opinions then too. Covers all opinions.
Well, we'll cover all opinions even if we did at the same time. We did both. It's still cover all opinions.
About going to the bathroom, I understand from Gemara that there's a difference between exactly what you do in the bathroom and if you are passing liquid fluid, it's not necessary.
That's regarding tefillin. You're confusing it with the law by tefillin. One is nothing to do with the other.
No, I'm not talking about tefillin. I'm talking about that unless you use the word defecate, that it's not necessary to wash your hands if you didn't get fluid on your hands.
Okay, if you're referring to washing hands after bathroom use, that's in the end of chapter 4. We're going to get to that in the coming weeks.
You brought it up now about impurities.
So the reason since we have to go to the bathroom, we cannot say a bracha on the first washing, because you can't say a bracha if you need to go to the bathroom. That's why we delay and have a second washing. That's why we don't say the bracha right next to the bed.
That second washing when we come out of the bathroom is for the preparation for the day and the normal after bathroom washing that morning.
Well, let's be patient. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
It's part of our agenda. We're going to get to that. Okay. We will cover it, but I just want to finish covering here this spirit of impurity. This spirit of impurity that resides on the hands, the idea that it resides on the hands is also we find a similarity with it in the Sifrei Kabbalah's description of the dibuk removal process.
Of the what?
Dibuk.
Oh, the dibuk. Okay.
A dibuk is like it's a connected soul, a wandering lost soul who hasn't made it to any of the chambers in heaven of Gan Eden, Gehenna. So it's lost in this world. It searches for an outlet of a human body to enter into, so it can find a safe haven. That's the concept of a dibuk. We have many stories with the Arizal, with other Gedolei Yisrael, with different dibukim. So it's explained, it's described in the stories that when different tzaddikim would do ceremonies to remove the dibuk, so the dibuk would come out of one of the fingers, and sometimes there would be a little cut in the finger releasing blood where the dibuk came out.
Sometimes you consider the foot.
Yeah, the fingers though. The fingers of the foot, the fingers of the hand. The idea is the finger, because that's the area, that's the last escape route of the klipa, of where it stays.
So the finger, meaning that the toes.
Yeah.
Also.
Well, no, we don't wash the toes.
No, but also the klipa is resting there also in the morning.
No, the morning klipa is specifically in the fingers of the hands. Specifically in the hands. Okay, so now this impurity of Bas Melech, even though, as I said before, it's unanimous, there is a discrepancy between the Zohar and the Talmud as to how powerful it is, which affects how many restrictions we have. The more powerful the impurity, the greater the restrictions. The less powerful the impurity, the less the restrictions. So we're just going to right now conclude with a list of the restrictions. We'll go into these restrictions next week in fine detail. So the following are the restrictions that everyone agrees upon, meaning Talmud and Zohar. And then I'll go into the added Zoharic restrictions that are kept because of its stronger view on the strength of this impurity. So everyone agrees, this is from the Talmud, that it's forbidden to touch body parts, certain body parts prior to washing. Certain areas of the body are prohibited from being touched prior to getting rid of this impurity. And for example, if you have an itch in your ear, you cannot put your finger in your ear.
This is before Nagelbas or the second
Correct,
washing?
before.
Before Nagelbas.
Yeah, you're in bed. If you haven't washed yet, before the first washing, before washing next to your bed. And one who does so, it says, the Gemara says, he can become deaf. Now, we're going to read this inside next week, but many people aren't careful with these restrictions, and I think they have perfect eyesight, and they still hear everything. So they actually explain this refers to spiritual deafness, spiritual blindness, that a person loses sensitivity for spiritual matters if he's not careful with this. Another matter that's also based on the Talmud, another restriction, is you're not allowed to touch food or drink water. It contaminates the food and can make the food be inedible. Those are the two main restrictions of the Talmud. The Zohar adds another 3.
So if you go to a restaurant and your server doesn't follow one of these halachos and they serve you these drinks and stuff.
That's a great question. You're going to have to stay till next week to hear the answer. That's a great question.
I'll just watch your iPad.
So the truth is that we'll discuss that next week, but I'll just say in short that if you have a Gentile waiter, Gentile kitchen worker, it's not an issue because Bas Melech Klipa has nothing to look for in him when he's sleeping. It's like, why does the cat come to the rich man's home? Because the rich man's home has food. The poor man's home has nothing to eat, so he's not going there.
Eat out of the garbage.
The Klipa, they need some holiness to nurture from.
I worry about the waiter. It could be anybody who prepares food for you that you could be suspicious about who doesn't.
If the waiter's Jewish, then that's a real issue. We'll discuss.
Or anybody in your house who may not have gone properly.
100%. So that we'll discuss next week. Emir Hashem, what do we do in that case? If it is a Jew, how we be careful. So let's go to the Zohar, and we'll conclude with this. The Zohar gives an added 3 restrictions. Number 1, a person is not allowed to touch clothing prior to washing hands. No touching clothing. Number 2, you're not allowed to walk 4 cubits before washing hands. 4 amos. Number 3, you're not allowed to verbalize words of Torah prior to washing hands. Now, possibly, even according to the Talmud, this is correct, this last one, but that depends on were your hands clean or not. If you slept in pajamas, and so your whole body was covered, or you slept with gloves, as you said before, no chance that your hands touch an uncovered part, a normally covered part, then your hands are pure. So you can say Torah according to the Talmud.
I thought you needed to say blessings before you say words of Torah. I thought we needed to say blessings, not just wash.
Very good. Blessings as well. According to the Talmud, if you went to sleep in gloves, you can wake up and already say all the brachas before you wash, aside from until Yosef.
That's why
the restriction against saying blessings or learning Torah before washing is Zoharic in nature. It's a Zoharic restriction due to the strength of this impurity. It's forbidden to say a blessing or learn Torah prior to removing this impurity from your hands, according to the Zohar.
Yeah, but it didn't say you couldn't say words of Torah before you said blessing. It said you couldn't. The Zohar added before washing you couldn't say words of Torah
or blessings. You can't say Hashem's name.
Oh, includes blessings.
Yeah.
So you can't say before washing. You can't say blessings, and you can't. Okay.
I thought the blessings were there to make. The Jewish world doesn't put Nagel Vasa by the bed. That's much more of an Indian or Hasidic. The majority of the Jewish world get up and go to the bathroom, and in the bathroom.
We're going to address that next week.
Because they don't hold by the Zohar.
In your neighborhood because of a hurricane or something, you don't have water to wash with.
Yeah.
What do you do over there?
You're asking a lot of good questions. You're really going to have to stay next week.
Go to the restaurant, ask that waiter will give you some water.
So we're going to discuss that later, but a person who doesn't have any water, the Alter Rebbe says the following. But the Alter Rebbe's question is based on this last restriction. This last restriction said you're not even allowed to learn or daven or do anything until you wash hands. Yeah, he said you can't say blessings, you can't learn Torah until you wash hands. So he says, so what does a person do? Does a person not learn Torah the whole day? So if the hurricane hit, he's not going to have water for a week. That's it. No learning Torah for a whole week, no davening for a whole week. Alter Rebbe says, God forbid to nullify Torah learning in such a case and go back and rely on the Talmudic allowance. So a person in such a case, what would he do? According to the Talmud, even if your hands were dirty, you wipe your hands on your clothing, on the table, on anything you can find, say your blessings, and learn Torah.
Can you, wait a second, after washing, according to the Zohar, the stricter opinion, right after washing, you could say words of Torah before saying blessings, or do you have to say, or is it separate?
Everyone agrees you're not allowed to say words of Torah until you say Birchas HaTorah.
Okay. I mean, the one blessing, Birchas Torah, or all the
Three
morning blessings?
Three blessings.
Three blessings.
Three blessings, Birchas Torah.
So if you were really hungry to share something abort with your wife in the morning, you just kind of skip to those three blessings and present to hate? Okay, it comes up a lot, right? I remember early in my marriage, we were still doing such crazy things, you know?
Or not,
Say your blessings.
Blessings or not, you're like really tired and you go, oh my gosh, I don't know if I said it or not. If you say them, it's a bracha balatala possibly. So you don't say it. I was told you rely on this paragraph for Shema to fulfill that obligation, but
That is correct.
You're learning Torah before you get there, so the Psalms and everything.
So now you're going to have to push off your ticket for 2 months.
Okay.
Come to Florida.
And the audience here too will, too.
You can't say words of Torah before his Shabbat.